Well, speaking of numbers, I've been very concerned about the Office of National Statistics because this is on migration figures. The agency published revised numbers for 2021 to 2024, which set out a very, very different picture as to what we've been told previously. The Boris wave, unsurprisingly, larger than previously thought. When British people are excluded, net migration is now thought to have peaked at over 1 million people in the year to March 2023. That's 110,000 higher than the previously estimated record high. So that is a lot higher there. But there is a bigger question and an equally valid question about the number of British people leaving the UK, which is significantly higher than previously thought. Well, one person who has largely left the UK for a better and different life is our international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, who has written and talked about living in Dubai. Maybe you could just tell us a little bit about that, Isabel, and then give us your reflections on these figures today about many people are doing the same things as you are.
Well, I mean, not a week goes past that I don't meet up with somebody in Dubai that's come out from the UK, you know, whether it's a former MP or former people from public relations or all sorts of walks of life. In fact, people from a whole range of professions that want to connect with me out here because either they're friends already or they've read about how I've made this move. And they're saying, look, I'm thinking about leaving. You know, I actually literally had a drink today with a former MP who told me I would move to Dubai tomorrow if I could. And why is that? Well, it's because basically people see no short-term respite from the relentless woes that the UK is currently suffering. And, you know, we barely need, because we talk about them all day on Talk, don't we? Whether it's the spiralling crime around asylum hotels, it's the fear of crime as much as the reality of crime, whether it's shoplifting, all the things that we talk about all day are what people are looking to escape from. And whether it's the United Arab Emirates or Italy or America, you know, people are basically fleeing the country. And that is an absolute tragedy. You know, it gives me no pleasure, in a sense, to have left my home country. Home is home, it always will be. You know, I still feel an absolute patriotic love for my country, but I also feel immense sorrow at what has happened to it, what is happening to it. But I do truly believe that we can turn things around.
In the year ending December 2024, 257,000 people left, not the 77,000 that the Office of National Statistics showed us, but a number of people came back, revised up from 83,243. I mean, I think there's a sort of slightly narrower question about why the Office of National Statistics, who, you know, you had one job, guys, and that's to get statistics right, really haven't got them right. But also why so many people are leaving. And actually, I hope you don't mind me saying this, I was once told never, ever comment on a woman's age, but there are people, shall we say, younger than both of us, Isabel, in their 20s perhaps, who are saying, actually, if they want to buy a home, if they want to earn more money, and if they want to take the opportunities that perhaps are more difficult to do a little bit later in life, or if you've kids in school or whatever, actually they're leaving for places like Dubai, Isabel.
Well, let me give you a very personal example. My own son, who's 18 years old, has just moved out to the United Arab Emirates to begin a career in real estate, doesn't want to go to university, doesn't want to be saddled with debt, and sees potentially more opportunities in this environment right now. Again, home is home. The UK is home. We are British people, but there are 250,000 British people living in Dubai, so often it feels kind of like home in any case. And I think that is, in some ways, that's an underexplored story. That, you know, the focus is often on the super rich, of which I'd love to be, but certainly am not. You know, the flight of wealth, the flight of wealth creators. We all know that billionaires, apart from maybe Rachel Reeves hasn't quite understood this, that multi-squillionaires and billionaires are highly mobile people. They don't stick around. You know, I've got a good friend who is in that category and once told me, and I actually thought it was a bit sad at the time. He said, you know, I see countries like hotels. You know, if I'm living in a country that has become a 3-star
Yeah,
hotel,
yeah.
is charging 5-star prices, I'm getting out of there. I'm moving to a different hotel. And I remember thinking at the time how sad that was, you know, to have such a little affinity for your home country. But I sort of understand that is the mentality of the super rich. What
And
I
it's not just the billionaires either, Isabel, because there are a lot of people who are now thinking, actually, it's not that, it used to be, I mean, years ago, when you moved to another country, you know, you'd never see your family again, or it would be rare to do so. They probably weren't coming out to see you, you probably weren't coming back for Christmas. But now air travel is cheaper. We have so many ways we can contact people essentially for free if we ring them through WhatsApp or whatever. There's a lot more access to being a kind of global citizen, isn't there? And that's part of it. Is nationality less important now, do you think? Because we have so many viewers and listeners, and I put myself in this category as someone who feels I'm trying to kind of cling to what Britain is. I don't know really what it is now, but I know what it was, and I feel so much has been lost. But I just wonder, as we're in a more globalised world, well, actually, is nationality or borders, dare I say it, less important?
Well, the point I was coming to was actually that the government should be much more worried, in a way, about the ordinary people, as it were, the young people who are starting out, the professionals, you know, the people in their late 20s and 30s. And I see so many of them. Another big cohort here in the Middle East is teachers. You know, we are losing from the UK thousands, I would imagine, literally thousands, not just to Dubai, but across the globe. And again, with healthcare professionals, we are losing these people quite often quite early in their careers, but also in the middle or later stages in their careers, to countries that perhaps offer a sunnier and, you know, less tax punitive lifestyle. And that should really worry the government, because as you're exporting, if you're the UK, you're exporting high net worth people and highly skilled people, and they are being replaced, as we all know, and Shabana Mahmood was pretty much acknowledging yesterday, with low skilled people or unskilled people. That's a really very, very daft trade. You know, no sensible regime would want to be making a trade of that kind. And you asked a more nuanced question about, you know, to what extent does nationality and borders matter? And I think that's such an interesting question. And, you know, it's for the younger generation to really answer that question, not you and I, Peter, because we feel fundamentally British. You know, we spent decades of our life in the UK. But in some ways, I welcome, you know, that level of mobility among young people. But in other ways, I'm reminded of that notorious comment by Theresa May about being, you know, citizens of nowhere.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah,
remember that?
yeah,
And she
yeah.
got a lot of flack for that. But I don't think it's a nice thing to be a citizen of nowhere. And actually, a lot of the super rich are, you know, they choose to be citizens of nowhere, and they rather like that.
Yeah.
I then wonder, where do they go to die? You know, I know that's a bit of a kind of, you know, poignant and perhaps gloomy question, but surely ultimately you want to go home. You know, where are your roots?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I don't think being rootless is a good thing either.
I totally agree. Thank you very much, Isabel. Really interesting to talk to you about all of those issues. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks international editor who lives most of her time in Dubai now.